18 years. That is how long he walked free. He changed his name. He changed his city. He married again. He found a new church, sat in the same pew every Sunday, folded his hands in prayer, and smiled at the congregation. And every single morning, for 18 years, he woke up knowing that 5 members of his family lay in sleeping bags on the floor of a ballroom in New Jersey, arranged in a neat row, like luggage at an airport carousel. Miles GhostHunter here. Some people do not run from justice. They calmly walk into a new life and close the door behind them. This is the story of John Emil List. And before we are done, you will understand something that most people never want to accept. That the most dangerous person in the world is not the one who loses control. It is the one who never loses control at all. Westfield, New Jersey. A town of wide lawns and white churches, and the kind of silence that comes from people minding their own business. In 1965, a family moved into the largest house on Hillside Avenue, a 19-room Victorian mansion called Breeze Knoll. 3 stories, a ballroom, a Tiffany skylight in the ceiling worth more than most people earned in a year. The neighbors noticed the family immediately, not because they were loud, because they were so impossibly, relentlessly quiet. The father was John Emil List, 40 years old, tall, thin, wire-rimmed glasses, a certified public accountant with a military background. He had served in World War II and Korea. He spoke softly. He dressed conservatively. He attended the Lutheran church without fail. If you had to describe him in one word, the word would be correct. Everything about John List was correct. His tie, his posture, his handshake, his silence. His wife was Helen List, born Helen Taylor in Maryland. She was 46 years old in 1971. Before she married John, she had been married once before. Her first husband died. She met John through mutual friends at a church social. Helen was warm where John was rigid. She liked people. She liked music. She played the organ at Redeemer Lutheran Church. But by 1971, Helen was not the woman she had been. She was drinking. The neighbors noticed the smell. She was fighting with John. The arguments were quiet, held behind closed doors, but the tension leaked out like smoke under a doorframe. Helen List was a woman trapped in a house that was too big, married to a man who was too controlled, and slowly losing her grip on everything she had once held together. Upstairs, on the 3rd floor, in a small apartment of her own, lived Alma List. She was 85 years old, John's mother. She had moved in with the family years earlier and rarely came downstairs. The neighbors almost never saw her. She was a ghost in her own son's house, living in 3 rooms above a family she barely interacted with. Alma List was devout. She read her Bible. She prayed. She trusted her son completely. Then there were the children, 3 of them. Patricia was 16. She was involved in theater and drama at school. She acted in school plays. She was social, outgoing, and starting to push back against her father's rigid rules about church attendance and behavior. John Jr. was 15. He played soccer. He was quieter than his sister, more internal, but he was beginning to question things too. He had recently told his father he was interested in other religions, not rejecting God, just curious, just 15. And then there was Frederick, the youngest, 13 years old. Frederick was the one who still obeyed without question. He went to school, he came home, he did what he was told. Frederick List was 13 years old and had no idea what was about to happen to him. That was the family. 5 people, a wife, a mother, 3 children, living in a mansion they could no longer afford, attending a church that defined their social existence, and orbiting around a man who controlled every detail of their lives without ever raising his voice. Now, what you need to understand is this. By 1971, everything behind the front door of Breeze Knoll was collapsing. and John List had decided that no one outside that door would ever know. He had lost his job. Not recently. He had lost it over a year earlier, and he had not told anyone. Every morning, John List put on his suit, picked up his briefcase, drove out of the driveway, and went to the train station. He sat in the station. He read the newspaper. He drove back in the evening. For over a year, his wife thought he was going to work. His children thought he was going to work. His mother thought he was going to work. He was going nowhere. He was sitting in a parked car at the Westfield train station, staring at the dashboard, doing nothing. The money was gone, not just the paycheck, everything. He had drained Helen's inheritance. He had taken out a second mortgage on Breeze Knoll. He had borrowed from his mother's savings. The Tiffany skylight alone should have been worth a fortune, but he could not sell it without the family noticing. The heating bill for 19 rooms was enormous. The property taxes were crushing. The house was eating them alive, and John List could not bring himself to sell it, because selling Breeze Knoll would mean admitting to the world that he had failed. And John Emil List could not fail. Not publicly, not visibly, not ever. Miles GhostHunter has read the letter that John List left on the desk in his study on the morning of November 9th, 1971. It was not addressed to the police. It was not addressed to his children. It was addressed to his pastor, Reverend Eugene Raywinkle of the Redeemer Lutheran Church. 5 pages, single-spaced, typed. And in that letter, John List explained everything. Not with remorse, not with grief, with accounting. He listed his debts. He listed his failures. He explained that Helen was drinking and drifting away from the church. He explained that Patricia was becoming interested in theater and acting, which he considered a gateway to immorality. He explained that John Jr. was exploring other faiths. He explained that the family was about to lose everything, that they would be humiliated, that they would fall into poverty, and that poverty would lead them away from God. And then he wrote the line that makes this letter one of the most disturbing documents in American criminal history. He wrote that he had decided to send them all to heaven before the world could send them to hell. He was saving their souls. That is what he told himself. That is what he told his pastor. He was not destroying his family. He was rescuing them from poverty, from sin, from a world that would corrupt them if they were forced to live in it without his financial protection. John List believed, with the absolute certainty of a man who has never questioned his own logic, that killing his family was an act of mercy. November 9th, 1971, a Tuesday. The morning began like every other morning at Breeze Knoll. John List woke up early. He dressed in his suit. He made breakfast. The children ate. Helen ate. Frederick grabbed his backpack. Patricia checked her hair. John Jr. said something about soccer practice. John List drove all 3 children to school. He watched them walk through the doors. Then he drove home. He parked in the driveway. He walked through the back door into the kitchen. Helen was there. We do not know exactly what was said. We do not know if she turned around. We do not know if she saw it coming. What we know is this. John List took a 9mm handgun that he had purchased weeks earlier, and he shot his wife Helen, the room she rarely left. John List entered the apartment. He shot his mother above the left eye. 1 shot. She died immediately. Then he went downstairs. He ate lunch. Miles GhostHunter wants you to sit with that for a moment. He shot his wife. He shot his mother. And then he made himself lunch. He sat at the kitchen table in a house where 2 women lay in their own blood, and he ate. Because he had more to do, and he was a man who kept to his schedule. The afternoon passed. At some point, he dragged Helen's body from the kitchen to the ballroom. The ballroom was the largest room in Breeze Knoll, a vast, open space with a hardwood floor and a high ceiling. He placed her on a sleeping bag. He folded her hands. Then he went upstairs and brought his mother's body down. He placed her on a sleeping bag as well, side by side, arranged neatly. Then he waited. He waited for the children to come home from school. Patricia came home first. She walked through the door. Her father was waiting. He shot her in the back of the head. She was 16 years old. John Jr. came home next. John List shot him. He was 15. But John Jr. did not die immediately. The boy fought. He struggled. He tried to get away. John List shot him multiple times. The exact number varies by source, but the medical examiner noted at least 2 additional wounds. John Jr. was the only one who resisted. He was the only one who saw it coming. He was 15 years old, and his father had to chase him through the house to finish what he started. Frederick came home last. He was 13, the youngest, the obedient one, the one who still did what he was told. He walked through the door, and his father shot him in the back of the head. One shot, like the others, like it was nothing. 5 people, all dead. The entire List family, except for the man who killed them. And then John List went to work, not to his office, to the house. He cleaned the kitchen where he had shot Helen. He mopped the blood. He moved all 5 bodies to the ballroom and arranged them in a row on sleeping bags. Helen, Alma, Patricia, John Jr., Frederick, side by side, hands folded, faces covered with cloth, like a man organizing a filing system, like a man closing out accounts at the end of a fiscal year. He walked through the house and cut his face out of every family photograph, every picture on every wall, every album on every shelf. Wherever his face appeared, he removed it with scissors, methodically, completely, as if erasing himself from the record, as if he had never existed in that house at all. He turned on a radio in the ballroom. He tuned it to a religious music station, hymns, organ music, the kind of music Helen used to play at church. He set the volume low, background noise, a soundtrack for the dead. He adjusted the thermostat, turned the heat down, cool enough to slow decomposition, warm enough that the pipes would not freeze. He was not crazy. He was calculating. He was thinking about what would happen to the house after he left. And he did not want water damage. He sat down at his desk and finished the letter to his pastor. 5 pages of explanation, 5 pages of theology and bookkeeping. He sealed it in an envelope and left it on the desk. He gathered his personal documents. He took the car keys. He walked out the front door of Breeze Knoll and closed it behind him. He drove to John F. Kennedy International Airport in New York. He left the car in the long-term parking lot, and he vanished. Nobody noticed for almost a month. That sentence deserves to stand alone. Nobody noticed that 5 human beings were missing for almost a month. The children were not in school, but John List had written letters to each of their schools before the killings, explaining that the family was traveling to visit a sick relative in North Carolina. The letters were polite. The letters were detailed. The schools accepted them without question. Helen had no close friends nearby. Alma never left the house. The neighbors saw lights in the windows because John List had put the lights on timers before he left. The house looked occupied. The radio played in the ballroom. The timer turned the lights on and off. From the outside, Breeze Knoll looked like a house where people were living their quiet, ordinary lives. It was December 7th, 1971, nearly a month after the killings. A neighbor named Patricia Sykes noticed that all the lights in Breeze Knoll had burned out. Every single one. The timers had failed. The house was completely dark. She called the Westfield Police Department. Officers Charles Haller and George Zalesnik responded. They entered through a side window. The house was cold. The thermostat had been set low, but it had been running for a month, and the heating bills had not been paid. The electricity was still on. The radio was still playing. Somewhere deep inside the house, hymns were still drifting through empty rooms. The officers followed the sound to the ballroom, and there, on the floor of the largest room in Breeze Knoll, they found them. 5 bodies, on sleeping bags, in a row, hands folded, cloths over their faces. Helen, Alma, Patricia, John Jr., Frederick. They had been there for 28 days. The cold had partially preserved them. The hymns had played for them the entire time, and John List was gone. What followed was one of the longest and most frustrating manhunts in American criminal history. And Miles GhostHunter needs you to understand why it was so difficult. Because John List did not act like a fugitive. He acted like a man starting over. The first clues were obvious. The car at JFK Airport, the letter to the pastor, the cut photographs. The police knew who had done it within hours. There was no mystery about the killer's identity. The mystery was where he had gone. The letter to Pastor Raywinkle was recovered from the study. Investigators read it and understood immediately that this was not a man who had snapped. This was a man who had planned every detail. The school letters, the light timers, the thermostat, the radio, the lunch between murders, the sleeping bags, the folded hands. This was the work of someone who believed he was acting rationally, and that belief made him more dangerous than any impulsive killer. Because a man who thinks he is rational will not panic. He will not make emotional mistakes. He will not call old friends. He will not return to familiar places. He will simply build a new life, brick by brick, and disappear into the ordinary. And that is exactly what John List did. The FBI placed him on the 10 most wanted fugitives list. They circulated his photograph across the country. Tips poured in, hundreds of them. Every quiet, bespectacled, middle-aged accountant in America became a suspect in someone's eyes, but none of them were John List. The investigation hit a wall that it could not break through. John List had no criminal record before the murders. He had no underworld connections. He had no drug habit, no gambling debts to shady characters, no associates who might shelter him for a price. He was a church-going accountant with a military background and a clean record. He was invisible. Not because he was hiding in shadows, but because he was the kind of man that no one looks at twice. Years passed. The case went cold. Detectives retired. New detectives picked up the file, read it, shook their heads, and put it back in the drawer. The Westfield police kept the case open. The FBI kept his name on the list, but the leads stopped coming. By the mid-1980s, John List had been missing for over a decade. And the realistic assessment within law enforcement was that he was either dead or would never be found. Let Miles GhostHunter take you somewhere unexpected now, away from the file cabinets, away from the tip lines, to a workshop in Philadelphia, where a man named Frank Bender was staring at a photograph of John List and thinking about bones. Frank Bender was a forensic sculptor, one of the best in the world. He had spent years reconstructing the faces of unidentified remains for law enforcement agencies. He understood how faces age, not just the wrinkles and the sagging skin. He understood the architecture underneath, how the skull changes, how fat redistributes, how the jaw shifts, how glasses sit differently on a face that has lost weight. Frank Bender looked at a photograph of John List, taken in 1971, a man of 46, and he began to imagine what that man would look like at 64. He worked with clay. He built the skull first, then layered muscle and skin. He made choices. List was thin in 1971. He would probably still be thin. The hairline was receding. By 64, it would be further back. The jaw would be slightly softer. The posture would be the same, because a man like John List never relaxes. Bender added glasses. Not the same glasses List wore in 1971. New frames. The kind a man would choose in the late 1980s. Heavier, darker. The bust was finished. It looked like a real person, not a sculpture. A person you might sit next to at church and never think about again. That was the genius of Frank Bender. He did not just age a face, he predicted a life. He predicted the choices a man like John List would make, what kind of glasses he would buy, how he would comb his remaining hair, what expression he would carry for 18 years while hiding the memory of 5 sleeping bags in a ballroom. In 1989, The television program, America's Most Wanted, was at the height of its influence. The host, John Walsh, had built the show around unsolved cases, and the John List case was exactly the kind of story that the audience responded to. A family annihilator, 18 years on the run, an entire family laid out on the floor of a mansion while hymns played on the radio. It was a natural fit. On May 21, 1989, America's Most Wanted aired a segment on the John List case. They showed the old photographs. They told the story of Breeze Knoll. They showed the letter to the pastor. And then they revealed Frank Bender's bust. The camera lingered on it. The aged face of John List stared out from the television screen into millions of living rooms across America. The glasses, the receding hairline, the thin lips, the expression of a man who has done something terrible and decided it was justified. 11 days. That is all it took. In Richmond, Virginia, a woman named Wanda Flannery was watching television. She saw the bust, she saw the glasses, she saw the hairline and the thin mouth, and the posture of careful, rigid control. And she recognized the man she knew as Robert Peter Clark. Robert Peter Clark lived in the Richmond suburb of Midlothian. He was an accountant. He attended St. Andrew's Lutheran Church. He was married to a woman named Dolores. He was quiet. He was methodical. He was unfailingly polite. He wore glasses. He was in his early 60s. He looked exactly like the bust on television. Wanda Flannery called the FBI tip line. Within hours, agents were on the ground in Richmond. They began surveillance on Robert Peter Clark. They ran his fingerprints through the system. The match was confirmed before the sun went down. On June 1st, 1989, FBI agents walked into the accounting office where Robert Peter Clark worked. They approached his desk. They said his name. Not the name he had been using for 18 years. His real name, John List. You are under arrest for the murder of Helen List, Alma List, Patricia List, John Frederick List, and Frederick List. He looked up from his desk. According to the agents present, his expression did not change. He did not run. He did not shout. He did not collapse. He simply said, "No." "My name is Robert Clark. You have the wrong person." But they did not have the wrong person. The fingerprints matched. A scar behind his right ear, from a mastoid operation in childhood, matched the medical records. The calm, measured denial was itself a kind of confession, because only John List would respond to the accusation of 5 murders with the same quiet, controlled composure that he had used to commit them. Now you know who did it. You have known who did it since the first sentence of this video. But now, Miles GhostHunter needs to take you deeper, because knowing the name is not the same as understanding the man, and understanding the man is not the same as understanding how he lived with himself for 18 years. John Emil List was born on September 17, 1925, in Bay City, Michigan. He was the only child of John Frederick List and Alma List. His father was a strict Lutheran. His mother was devout to the point of rigidity. Young John was raised in a household where obedience was the highest virtue, and questioning authority was the deepest sin. He did not rebel. He did not act out. He did what he was told. He got good grades. He went to church. He enlisted in the United States Army during World War II and served in the European theater. After the war, he served again in Korea. He earned the rank of first lieutenant. His service record was clean. His commanding officers described him as reliable and methodical. After Korea, he earned a degree in accounting and a master's in business administration from the University of Michigan. He became a certified public accountant. He married Helen in 1951. They moved to Kalamazoo, then to Rochester, New York, and finally to Westfield, New Jersey in 1965. He bought Breeze Knoll because it was impressive, because it projected success, because John List understood that the appearance of order is more important than order itself, and a 19-room mansion on Hillside Avenue told the world that he had made it. But he had not made it. The jobs kept falling through. He was competent, but not exceptional. He was hired, promoted modestly, and then laid off when companies restructured. Each time, he found a new position, but each new position was slightly lower than the last. He could not hold the trajectory, and he could not tell anyone, because admitting failure was, for John List, a sin equivalent to blasphemy. God expected him to provide for his family. If he could not provide, he was failing God. And if he was failing God, then God was watching, and God was judging, and the only way to restore the balance was to act decisively. That logic, that horrifying, airtight, circular logic, is the engine that drove November 9th. He could not tell his wife he had lost his job. He could not sell the house and admit to the neighborhood that he was broke. He could not watch his children grow up in poverty and drift away from the church. He could not ask his mother for more money. He could not go on welfare. He could not do any of the things that ordinary people do when they face financial ruin, because ordinary people are allowed to fail. John List was not in his own mind, not under his own theology. And so he found the only solution that his rigid, airless, suffocating logic would permit. He would remove the problem, all of it, everyone. The 9mm Steyr automatic pistol was purchased weeks before the murders. He also had a .22 caliber revolver. He practiced at a shooting range. He wrote the letters to the schools in advance. He researched long-term parking at JFK Airport. He closed bank accounts. He forwarded mail. Every detail was planned with the same precision he had once applied to corporate ledgers. This was not a breakdown. This was a project with deliverables and a timeline and an exit strategy. And that is what separates John List from almost every other family annihilator in the criminal record. Most family killers act in a moment of rage, or despair, or psychotic break. They snap, they destroy, and then they collapse. They call the police, or they turn the gun on themselves, or they sit in the wreckage and wait to be found. John List did none of those things. He cleaned up. He ate lunch. He arranged the bodies. He set the timers. He wrote a letter to his pastor in which he asked for forgiveness not from his family, but from God, for the sin of not trusting God enough to provide. Even his confession was self-serving. Even his guilt pointed back at himself as the victim. Now let Miles GhostHunter reconstruct November 9th one more time. But this time, you know who John List is, and every detail means something different. The morning. He drives the children to school. He already knows he will kill them when they come home. He watches them walk through the doors. Patricia, heading to drama class. John Jr., thinking about soccer. Frederick, carrying his backpack. Their father watches them disappear into the building, and then he drives home to kill their mother. 9:45 in the morning. Helen is in the kitchen, perhaps making coffee, perhaps standing at the sink. Her husband walks up behind her with the Steyr pistol and fires one shot into the back of her head. She drops. He steps over her body and walks upstairs. 10:15. Alma is in her apartment. Her son enters. She looks up. Maybe she smiles. Maybe she starts to say something. He shoots her above the left eye. She falls backward. He leaves the room and closes the door. He goes downstairs. He sits at the kitchen table. He eats. The clock ticks. Helen is on the kitchen floor. Alma is in her bed upstairs. The children are in school, learning things they will never use, talking to friends they will never see again. And their father is chewing his food, watching the clock, waiting. He drags Helen's body to the ballroom. He places her on a sleeping bag. He goes upstairs and carries Alma down 3 flights of stairs. He places her next to Helen. He folds their hands. He covers their faces. 3:15. Patricia comes home. She walks through the door. She probably calls out, "Dad? Mom?" Nobody answers except the gun. One shot. She is 16. 3:45. John Jr. He walks in. Something is wrong. Maybe he sees his sister. Maybe he just sees his father's face. He runs. His father chases him. The first shot does not kill him. He fights. There are more shots, at least 3. John Jr. dies in the hallway, or the kitchen, or the stairs. The exact location varies by account. What does not vary is this: he was the only one who fought, and it was not enough. 4 o'clock, Frederick, the last one, the youngest, the obedient one. He walks through the door and he dies. He is 13, 5 bodies, 5 sleeping bags, 1 row, hands folded, faces covered, radio on, lights on timers, thermostat lowered, photographs defaced, letter on the desk, car keys in his pocket. He drives to the airport. He parks. He walks into the terminal and disappears into the crowd. He becomes no one. And then, slowly, carefully, methodically, he becomes someone else. Robert Peter Clark appeared in Denver, Colorado, sometime in late 1971 or early 1972. He had a social security number. He had a clean background. He got a job as a cook at a Holiday Inn. Then he moved to accounting work. He earned another CPA certification. He joined a Lutheran church. He met a woman named Dolores Miller at a church social. He married her in 1985. He was a good neighbor. He was quiet. He was polite. He was unfailingly correct. He was John List in every way except the name. For 18 years, Robert Peter Clark lived a life that was indistinguishable from the life John List had lived before the murders. Same profession, same church denomination, same rigid posture, same wire-rimmed glasses, same thin-lipped silence. He had not reinvented himself. He had simply hit the reset button and started the same program over again. The only difference was that this time, there were no children to disappoint him, no mother to drain, no wife to spiral. Dolores was quieter than Helen. She did not drink. She did not argue. She was, by all accounts, exactly the kind of wife that John List believed he deserved. And that is the part that haunts Miles GhostHunter the most. Not the murders, not the sleeping bags, not the radio playing hymns in an empty ballroom for 28 days. What haunts me is the 18 years of normalcy that followed. Because those years prove something that we do not want to believe. They prove that a man can kill 5 people, including 3 children, and then go to church on Sunday and fold his hands and pray and feel nothing that looks like guilt. John List did not drink himself to death. He did not have nightmares that woke the neighbors. He did not confess to a bartender at 2 in the morning. He simply moved on. He filed his taxes. He attended potluck dinners. He shook hands with the pastor after the sermon. And every single day, for 6,570 days, he carried the weight of 5 murders, and it did not bend him 1 inch. The trial began on April 1st, 1990, in Elizabeth, New Jersey. John List was charged with 5 counts of first-degree murder. His defense attorney, Elijah Miller Jr., mounted an insanity defense. Not legal insanity in the dramatic sense. The defense argued that List suffered from obsessive-compulsive personality disorder, that his rigid religiosity had created a mental framework in which the murders seemed rational, and that he was therefore not capable of the premeditation required for first-degree murder. The prosecution, led by Assistant Prosecutor Brian Gillette, destroyed that argument methodically. They presented the letters to the schools, the light timers, the thermostat, the forwarded mail, the parking reservation at JFK, the lunch between killings. Every detail screamed premeditation. Every detail screamed control. This was not a man who had lost his mind. This was a man who had used his mind with devastating efficiency to eliminate 5 human beings and then erase himself from existence. The jury deliberated for less than a day. On April 12, 1990, they returned a verdict of guilty on all 5 counts of first-degree murder. John List showed no emotion when the verdict was read. He stood in the same posture he had maintained throughout the trial, straight, still, correct. He was sentenced to 5 consecutive life terms in prison. Under New Jersey law at the time, this meant he would not be eligible for parole for 75 years. He was 64 years old. He would die in prison. And he knew it with the same mathematical certainty that had governed every other calculation of his life. In prison, John List continued to attend religious services. He continued to read his Bible. He continued to maintain that he had acted out of love. In a rare interview, he was asked if he regretted what he had done. He said he regretted that it had been necessary. Not that he had done it, that it had been necessary. As if the murders were a weather event, as if they had happened to him. Dolores Clark, the woman who had married Robert Peter Clark in 1985, learned the truth from the television broadcast that led to his arrest. She had been married to a man she did not know. She had shared a bed with a man who had executed his previous family and arranged their bodies in a row. She filed for divorce immediately. She never spoke to him again. John Emil List died on March 21, 2008, at the age of 82, in a prison hospital in Trenton, New Jersey. The cause of death was complications from pneumonia. He had served 18 years in prison, the same number of years he had spent free under a stolen name. There is a symmetry in that, but Miles GhostHunter finds no comfort in it. Breeze Knoll, the 19-room mansion on Hillside Avenue in Westfield, burned to the ground in August 1972, 9 months after the murders were discovered. The fire was ruled arson. The arsonist was never identified. Some suspected teenagers. Some suspected neighbors who could not bear to look at the house anymore. The Tiffany skylight that John List could not sell was destroyed in the fire. It had been valued at over $100,000. It was the one asset that might have saved the family from bankruptcy. He could not sell it because selling it would have been visible, and visibility was the one thing John List could not tolerate. Patricia List was 16 years old. She wanted to be an actress. She never performed in front of an audience again. John List Jr. was 15 years old. He played soccer and asked questions about the world. He never asked another question. Frederick List was 13 years old. He carried his backpack to school on the morning of November 9, 1971. He came home that afternoon, and his father was waiting for him. The hymns played for 28 days. The lights burned on their timers until the bulbs died. The house stood dark and cold on Hillside Avenue, and inside, 5 people lay in sleeping bags on the floor of a ballroom, arranged in a perfect row, while the man who put them there sat in a parking lot in Denver, reading the want ads and planning his new life. Some monsters do not look like monsters. They look like accountants. They wear wire-rimmed glasses and attend church and fold their hands in prayer and speak softly and never, ever raise their voice. And the most terrifying thing about John List is not what he did on November 9, 1971. It is that after he did it, he drove to the airport, and he disappeared, and he built an entirely new life, and he felt nothing at all. This has been Miles GhostHunter. Next time we travel to Springfield, Oregon, where a mother drove her 3 children to a river and told them they were going to see a friend. Only one of them came back. The Diane Downs story. I will see you there.